All right, guys, and we are live, and we are back here in the very, very last week. Ooh, let me get those comments up. There we go. We're back in the very last week of January. As always, we're going to start out with tell me where you guys are calling in from, where you guys are watching from. I want to know all of it. And how are you guys doing with the cold? Literally, how are you doing with the cold? It has been just a monster to deal with here in Metro Detroit. If you're in Metro Detroit or you're from Metro Detroit, let me move this camera a little bit this time around. Oh, there we go. Now I'm more centered. If you're in Metro Detroit, if you're from Metro Detroit, how have you guys been dealing with this cold, especially having the kids home from school so much and all of the things? It's been crazy out. As always, guys, we're going to start out with letting me know where you guys are watching from. Go ahead and throw that in the chat. My name is Michael Perna. I'm your host. I usually do this every Thursday, but I have an event on Thursday that I need to go to. This is our weekly news roundup where I'm going to go through a lot of the important stories that are happening right now. Oh, there we go. I got a Troy, Michigan. Hey, Troy, Michigan, I see you down over there. I'm going to go through the roundup of a list of stories that we're seeing here in Metro Detroit and in Michigan that affects Detroiters. I do the news in a very unbiased fashion. I try to go straight at it. As you guys know, if you guys have been watching me, if this is your first time tuning in, awesome. Hello, welcome. Stay for a while. Get a soda, get a coffee, get a tea, get a hot cocoa on a day like this. Okay, I've got a Canton, Michigan. That's kind of the opposite side from Troy. So Troy's kind of up here. Canton's kind of down to the west a little bit. We got Lansing. Thank you, Lansing, in the house. And let me know, guys, where you guys are coming in from, and everything you guys have been doing to stay warm. I know if you guys have been following me for a while, then you probably saw that I went skiing on Sunday like a crazy person. Got up early, got to Mount Holly at the time that it opened at 9 on Sunday. I was pretty much the only person there. There were like 8 cars in the lot, but by 10:30, 11 o'clock, the slopes were packed, which was actually really nice to see people out, even though the roads were actually pretty terrible on the way up. I got a Cincinnati. You are my first Cincinnati, I think, ever in the history of ever. What's up, Ohio? How are you? Okay, but we're going to move on to our first story in just a moment here. Anybody else want to let me know where you guys are coming in from? I got a Fort Lauderdale. Hey, man. Hey, man. How you doing? Great. Good to see you. Oh, I got another Canton. Oh, Don. What's up, man? There you are. Hey, how have you been? It's been a minute. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Cool. All right. Here we go. I'm going to bring this first story up on the stage. This is something that has gotten a lot of traction, is a little bit controversial, but we do not hide from things here at the Perna team or Michael Perna or whatever. I'm going to report on everything. So this happened late last week. Bring that on up. So Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock, which is a $10 trillion investment company, said after the Davos conference in Switzerland, you know what? We are out of touch here in Davos. We want to move somewhere else. And he very specifically named 4 cities. And the order of those 4 cities were Dublin, Detroit, Jakarta, and Buenos Aires. So he wants to move the WEF, the World Economic Forum, to one of those 4 cities. And we were on the map. He cited Detroit because it's where the middle class was born and raised and grew, and feels like it's much more in touch with common people, which the WEF, the World Economic Forum, which is a whole bunch of business people and world leaders, have just frankly lost touch with. And frankly, in my opinion, he's not wrong. They have lost touch. I don't know that moving to any of those 4 cities are going to regain touch, but this has been really controversial. So I did a couple of posts on this on Facebook and Instagram, and I got very mixed results. So the polling data, I went through all my comments. I went through all my positives, all my negatives. There were literally over 600 comments on these between the 2 posts, between the Facebook and the Instagram post. And as it turns out, roughly 450 of the 600 people definitely do not want these people in the city of Detroit or anywhere near it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about potentially the WEC coming here, because this is a hot topic, because there are sides to this. So the one side is, let me raise my chair a little bit. There we go. So the one side of it is a lot of people feel that these are, especially with BlackRock, feel that these are companies that take advantage of everyday people, everyday Americans, even people across the world, and they don't want it anywhere near our city. As one quote put it, and I actually have it on my phone right here, as one quote put it, "This is a meeting of the evilest people in the world, all in one place. We don't want them in Detroit." Is that accurate, guys? You tell me. Now, the far side of it is this generates hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, probably on approach to $1 billion in revenue. Just this one meeting every year. So currently it takes place in Davos, Switzerland. During that time, hotel rooms go in excess of $50,000 a night. So as one person said, well, in Detroit, we don't have any $50,000 hotel rooms. Good point. So I checked out Davos during May, June, July, some of the other months, October, November. Turns out the average hotel room in Davos sits between $200 and $550 typically. There are a couple $1,000 suites, but very, very few. So they really raise the prices when people like this come into town. A lot of it because there's security forces and there's so much more there. Now, one thing I did do on the research side of it is, because one of the questions is, how is this going to actually impact the area? Because are people just going to go and stay either at those luxury brand hotels like the upper echelon Hiltons or upper echelon Marriott's, or do they actually venture into the city? Well, again, doing the research, I found out that in Davos, a lot of the local businesses, like local restaurants, are completely rented out for nights at a time at way above premium pricing, so that delegations can meet together off-site from the actual conference itself, which is where, of course, a lot of business gets done. So a lot of the local businesses will be able to see things like let's say Adelina on Woodward would be completely rented out. And that's a locally owned business. They also own Bell Bistro in Birmingham, which, by the way, if you're looking for a great smash burger, oh, chef's kiss on that one. But let's say that they rented out the entirety of Adelina for the night. They would be paying far more than what that local restaurant and those local people would be bringing in that night on any other typical night where the public was available. So there are some positives with this as well. But do the positives outweigh the negatives? I'm going to let you guys decide on that one. And whether or not we do want these folks or we don't want these folks here in Michigan, and most especially in the city of Detroit. I can say this. I know Rocket and Dan Gilbert are really, really pushing for this. And the reason why they're pushing for this is because they believe that this also puts Detroit and us on the map, on the international map, on the center stage. And they believe that this is where Detroit belongs. And from Dan Gilbert's perspective, I understand it, because he has been investing in the city and believing in the city before the city even believed in itself, as far as a comeback or a rebound goes. So, I'll let you guys decide as to whether or not this is a good thing for the city or a bad thing for the city. Now, we're going to move on to our next, actually, what I didn't think was controversial, but apparently I was wrong, thing to happen. Let me grab this, stop that screen, grab the next one. It always takes me a second to switch screens. I gotta maybe get somebody in here with me to help me with just that one thing. That would be actually really helpful. Okay. All right, we're going to bring this article up to the forefront. I did not think that this thing could be controversial, but apparently it is. Oh, there we go. All right, there you go, bro. All right, so General Motors has officially announced its profit sharing for 2025. Checks will be going out in not too long. I believe second week or third week of February. However, the profit sharing amount is $10,500 per union member. And for the first time, temporary workers can get bonus checks as well. So again, General Motors, UAW, there are 47,000 people that are going to be receiving $10,500, which that's a lot of money. In my opinion, that's a lot of money, especially here in 2026, where the dollar just doesn't go as far as it could. Now, that said, I put a post out about this a couple of days ago. I had over 200 comments on Instagram, another 300 comments on Facebook. And frankly, a lot of this went to the negative. A lot of this went to the union workers should not be receiving this money. They need to be building better vehicles. They need to not put this money out there. One person actually said they need to repay the government loans from the last recession, 2008. So I want to know what your opinion is, guys. Is this a good thing or not a good thing? And now I'm going to tell you my opinion. Throw your opinion there in the chat, please. I appreciate you. And any other thoughts or any other comments or any other questions. So let's go back to the etymology of this. So this profit sharing was negotiated in the last union contract in lieu of massive raises. The going thought was, well, hopefully under the leadership of Mary Barra, we're going to see General Motors profit. Now, there's no guarantee it happen, but hopefully we're going to see it. And then the far side of it is the union contract said, okay, great. If Mary Barra can profit like they do, instead of these raises, which could burden General Motors, we will accept a modest 3% wage increase, which is way below standard. But then we want some of that profit, which I felt made sense when Fain had negotiated that agreement. At least it made sense to me. It may not make sense to you, may not make sense to everybody, but it made sense to me. Now, Since then, last year was a $14,000 profit share check. This year was a $10,500, partially because they wrote down in Q4 $3.6 billion worth of losses on their EV side because they're actually abandoning EV or pulling back. General Motors is doing more of a pullback from EV than a full-on abandonment like Ford Motor is. So that said, 10,500, of course, is going to be fairly heavily taxed. So they're really looking at 5,500 to 7,000 per person, somewhere in there. I'm not a tax specialist. I personally think it's a good thing. And here's why. Union members back in 08, 09, when the big three were going through its dark days, should I say, they were going to the government asking them for a couple of bucks to help out. I don't know if you guys remember this, but they actually took private jets, which they did for expedient purposes. And of course, they just got mauled in the news because they're like, okay, these guys are taking 3 separate private jets to go meet with the then president and talk to Congress and members of Congress. And they're going begging for money on a private jet, on a $50 million private jet. Like, really? Really, guys? It just felt a little tone deaf at that time. Although logistically, it makes sense. The private jets are there so that CEOs and whatnot can move around a lot faster. So let's break that down for General Motors. What ended up happening? So General Motors ended up getting about $50 billion from the government as far as loans go. Now, 2 parts of that. One part was paid back early and with interest in April 2010. And that was $6.7 billion. The second part of it, actually, there were 2 separate loans, let me put it that way. The second part of it, which was a $49.5 billion loan, was paid back through stock. So the government was given shares of stock in General Motors because they didn't have the cash to pay it back. And at the time, the shares of stock was worth $39.5 billion. Now, did the government get all its money back? No, it lost $10 billion on the deal. So that person that had commented on Facebook was right. The government did not get all its money back. However, and Mary Barra was not the CEO yet. She was still rising through the ranks. The current leader who brought General Motors back to profitability. However, I forgot the name of the CEO at that moment. The CEO at that moment said, hey, look, we want to pay this off faster. So we're going to give you this $39.5 million in today's value of stock. I sincerely believe, this was 2010, the economy is improving. We're going to be selling more cars. The stock value will go up. So government, I'm going to give you this money now just so that this burden is off our books. This is the deal. If you wait a year or 2 and sell it, you'll probably get the full amount, if not more. Well, the government didn't wait. They just sold it. So the government chose to lose the $10 billion in that case, because had they waited a year or 2, they would have gotten the full value. And if you look at the stock today, where's General Motors at? Trading just under $85 per share, which is a very high number. It's a number I've been waiting for a long time, by the way, because it's been bumbling around in the 30s for a long time, in 40s. But let me know what you guys think on whether or not this is a good thing or not a good thing. Should UAW members be getting this money? Should they not be getting this money? Let me know in the comments. Okay, we're moving on to the next article. We got a lot to get through tonight too, which is actually pretty cool. I love that there's so much news going on right now, and so much, frankly, positive news, which is interesting because we don't always have positive news. Okay, so I'm going to bring this article up to the screen. I was going to report on this last week. However, I was not 100% sure if this was accurate, so I wanted to get a secondary source. It is accurate. I don't like to report on things unless I have a minimum of 2 sources. And now I have 2, so I can do that, which is great. I don't always bring 2 onto the stage, but you know. All right, add to the screen, and away we go. Okay, so, I moved the title down. Well, that's no bueno. So there's a renovation boom happening specifically among historic structures and homes, especially homes, happening in Detroit right now. So the number of permits that have been applied for in 2025 was literally almost double 2024. Now, this is interesting because this means that people and investors are getting into the city, but more importantly, instead of tearing down, values have risen high enough that they're choosing to renovate and preserve these buildings and these properties, which is unique. If we were going back to 2019 or before, that was not the case. It was actually cheaper in a lot of cases to tear down. And that's why we had so many historic homes and historic buildings that just sat there unrenovated because the property values were not high enough to do so. Now, what I also like about this, and what the State of Detroit likes about this, is with those permits that are being pulled proactively, unlike unlike in arrears, like it was being done so many years before, like between 2010 and 2020, that was a real problem where even investors were going in and not pulling permits. They were doing the work and then pulling the permits after the fact in reverse, which you shouldn't do, Most municipalities say that that is a big no-no. And again, guys, let me know what you think in the comments and any questions, and what your thoughts are on anything. I love your opinions. And also give me a follow. We do this every single week. It's a lot of fun if you're not currently following. But the good thing is by pulling these permits in advance, the building department's not having to go back, especially the historic portion of the building department, and issue additional fines, and then even more inspections happen. So there's been a problem in Detroit where investors don't understand historic zones and historic districts, and being as such, a lot of these investors will go in, buy a property, start doing the rehab and the reno. They'll do it, then they'll go to the city and then pull all those permits in reverse. The problem, of course, being is when the city gets there and they're like, hey, what are you guys doing? You can't do this to the facade of this property because it is a historic property. Now they have to go back and undo that work, or they've got to pay fines or some combination thereof. But it does need to be approved. So yes, I do like that there is a renovation boom happening in Detroit right now, that double the number of permits are being pulled. I like that they're being pulled ahead of time, which means you have people that know what they're doing, or at least more people that know what they're doing. But this is also really interesting. So recently, last year, there was a push to add the Rensen, like the actual property of the Rensen, to a historic district, right? So the thought there was, if they did that, then the historic commission would have more control over what happens next with the Rensen, right? Because there's a push by Bedrock to tear down a couple of the towers, and they want to do this amazing Navy Pier style Riverwalk, or Detroiters, most of them, want to keep all the towers because it's iconically Detroit skyline. And I can completely see both sides of this. I've gotten a lot of comments on both sides of this. Either tear it down and put something more useful there, or leave it up and try to renovate it the best we can, even though it's kind of an archaic structure. So that was actually struck down. They were not able to get the Rensen into its own little mini historic district. Currently, there's a push to do that with Eastern Market. And then there are a couple of other sites as well. One of them is over in Corktown, the old, it's not the Bankers Building. If somebody remembers it, is it the accounting building? Maybe it is the Bankers Building. But there's a historic property in Corktown that is not deemed historic at the moment by the city. So somebody could theoretically buy it today, tear it down literally tomorrow before any of that happens or goes through. Which personally, I like the preservation of historic properties. I think it gives cities character and charm and class. I think they look great, especially the facades. I think a lot of things that were built post World War II do not, right? Actually, let's talk about that for a second. So going around through England, of course, I stopped at London, right? I've been to London a couple of times, right? My brother-in-law's from England. His mom lives there, just outside of London. So like all the things, right? And one thing I noticed when I was walking through downtown with a friend of mine that happens to live there, Chris, I looked at some of these buildings. I said, wow, that is an ugly building. That is an ugly building. And Chris looked straight at me and said, well, there's a reason for that. And I said, I'm really actually curious. What's the reason? And he said, that building was originally a beautiful building, but during World War II, it was bombed. And then they had to rebuild a new building on top of it when Nazi Germany was bombing London. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. I knew it happened, but I had not connected those newer, more modern buildings with that. And it just looked incongruent and out of place. In fact, the architecture that they were using at that time in London, I think it was called Brute, but it's very aggressive, very modernistic, very industrial. It did not seem to fit with anything surrounding it. But again, building some of these older buildings the way that they were built is just far too expensive to go ground up. So you either got to renovate or you're just not building them. So I do think this is a good thing. So the city of Detroit also has been putting out their grants for decades for people that do buy historic buildings and they restore the facade, they restore the front of it. And then these grants, if you hold the properties for a certain period of time, they're forgivable, which is a grant, right? It starts as a loan, zero interest loan, then turns into a grant. That, and then you combine that with some of the opportunity zone money of the last two tax codes, and boom, we've got renovation booms happening in Detroit. And that's a lot of the impetus of it, are people that are buying these properties where the city can give you a little bit of money. The federal government is going to give you a little bit of money. The requirement is you hold the property for at least 10 years, and that's all forgivable, which is adding, thankfully, more housing stock, which is very much needed, mostly in the rental capacity. So yeah, there's renovation boom in Detroit, guys. Cool. Okay, moving on. Moving on. Um, and let me know also anything that's happened this week that I'm not covering, because I'm always in for just impromptu talking, impromptu things happening. There are a lot of things that cover each and every week, so there's a lot of stuff that I don't cover. So if there's something I'm missing, I want to know. I want to know. And then we're going to continue down this real estate path for two more, and then we're moving on to, I believe, restaurants, because that's my favorite thing to talk about. Which, by the way, I tried Little Ghost today. Great burger. Okay. So let's talk about this. Finally, there are new construction starter homes happening in the city of Detroit. Okay. I forgot who it was by too. Was it Greenwater, Greenbrier, Greenleaf, Green something? Where are we at here? Greenwater. Oh, I had that right. Okay. So Greenwater Housing Group, Greenwater Opportunity Group, LLC, is building 400 homes in the city of Detroit that are affordable, starting at $330,000. Which I know you say the words $330,000 doesn't seem to feel very affordable, but it is actually affordable housing by today's measure. They're starting with a 2-bedroom, 1 full bathroom, 1,000 square foot, which is $330 per foot, by the way. And then the next up is one that's deeper in the threes, like not quite 400, but a little bit under 400. That's a 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom. That's a little bigger. And then their big boy is 438,000 as a base price. And that one's 1,800 square feet. Now, here's what's interesting. When interviewed, the owner, and actually the owner of Greenwater, I actually met the guy. I was eating at Mad Nice maybe 2 years ago, and he recognized me, and so he actually started talking. And he was telling me about this project that he was doing. That he had taken over, and he was able to get the land on the severely inexpensive side, which is the only reason why he has the capacity to do this. And of course, he was asked, why aren't builders building more affordable housing? Why is there no more affordable housing stock? And it's not because builders make less; it's because they make nothing, right? So again, looking at the housing problems of today, there are a couple potential solutions that have been floated out there. Let's stop big business from buying houses. Let's use the Treasury to put $200 million worth of mortgage stock into the market to lower interest rates. A couple of different things out there, right? But the one thing that we really need as a country is affordable housing, because family formations are going up, not down. So between 2008 and now, there were over 20 million families formed. And typically speaking, each one of those family formations where people get married or have kids or whatever that looks like, they require a new space to occupy, or just a space to occupy, right? Family formations also cover people that become adults that need their own space. Now, bringing this back to what matters. Because we have 20 million more families formed, or units, or individuals, or people that just need their own space, but we had a severe construction crisis and shortage over the last 16, 17, 18 years now, 18 years, we are now down about 8 million properties that could have been built and that should have been built had there been no 2008 recession. So let's take this back. 2008. 2008 happened. Home values fell 30% in 1 year and 20% the next. Some areas that fell as high as 80% or even 90%, like in the city of Detroit or Pontiac or Flint. Some of them were a little better off, like a Northville or a Novi or a Troy or a Rochester or a Grosse Pointe or Groseal, where yes, they fell 40%, but not quite 50%, right? Livonia, Farmington Hills were like 50, 55%, 60, some areas, okay? So let's take this back to there. So with those home values falling so far, but construction cost, materials, and labor not falling, labor fell a little bit, but not much. Builders are literally just stopped building. So Bill Pulte at the time, who was running Pulte, now he works for the government, said, "Hey, you know what? We're kind of done for a minute." Toll Brothers said, "We're done for a minute." On a national level, MI Homes, Lennar, those guys said, "We're done for a minute," and they stopped building. And they can afford to pause for 18 to 24 months. Maybe even make purchases of land for future builds on the cheap today. They have the resources to bank that. But 65% of builders don't. 65% of builders at that time were mostly people that were either builders that were building 20 to 100 homes a year, and that's it. And if there's no income, they're done. Or they were spot builders that were more like jumped up contractors. And that sounds negative. I don't mean to go negative with it, but there are people that used to be contractors that had decided to get a builder's license and go into actually building homes, and they do know what they're doing. But then the problem comes in with If you're only building 10 or 15 homes a year, are you making good money? Absolutely. Absolutely. You got a small crew. You're probably overseeing it yourself. So there's not that extra layer of expense. But if you stop building those 15 homes a year and you got to wait 2 years for the next spot of income, you're just out of the business. And that's what happened. So we went from building roughly 1 million homes a year pre-2008, 2000 up to 2007, down to 200,000 homes a year. And we finally got back to 1 million in 2019. And of course, we know what happened in 2020, COVID. So housing starts again dropped to almost nothing, right? So the number one thing that we could do is support builders like Greenwater, where they're actually building affordable properties that the average American actually needs, right? And my proposal, which I've literally written 2 different governors, I've written I've written 2 different presidents and 1 governor on and said, not that the governor can do anything about it really, but really a president needs to step in, is say, hey, look, we use the tax code so much to do the things that government doesn't want to do, right? Like when we build rental property or we buy rental property as investors, we get significant tax write-offs. Like I bought a rental property for $250,000 in Royal Oak a couple of years ago. I was able to save, I'm not even kidding, $70,000 on my income tax. $70,000. And that's not even including what I'm bringing in for rents. That's just on that property. So what if we use the tax code a little bit different of a way? What if, like let's look at new builds build right now. Almost nothing's happening below 700,000 anywhere in Southeast Michigan, and say, look, you're most likely to build $1 million house because you're going to make around 150,000 in profit. On that 150 in profit, you're going to pay about 45,000 in taxes. What if you built a home, let's say in Royal Oak, or let's say you built a home in Dexter, or you built a home in anywhere really, Livonia. There's still some land left in Livonia. And for every home you built at or below the median sales price, you don't have to pay taxes on that $1 million new build. Now, here's what this looks like. Most starter homes, builders are losing around $15,000 on. That's why they're not building them. They're losing money, $15,000. Now, would they necessarily make a whole slew of cash if they built a starter plus $1 million one? Not necessarily, but they would make 30,000 more that way each house. So that's my proposal. Write your state senator, write your governor, write the president. That I believe is the most viable, hardest, but best solution. And will it take 18 months to kickstart the builders into actually building if we put some provision like that in the tax code in place? Yeah, of course it will. But we've had this housing shortage for 18 years. 18 years. We can wait another 18 months to get this thing actually kickstarted, another 18 months after that to really start feeling some price relief. Okay, off my soapbox. On to the next thing. And again, contact your senators, contact your governors, contact your president. That's just my belief. One man's belief as to how to fix this. The other thing I will say that Bill Pulte did have, which was a great idea, is the movable mortgage. That I think would help as well because I have a 3% rate right now. Wherever I go next, it will be 6%. If I can move my 3% over to that next house and then I get the 6%. So let's say I move a $300,000 mortgage today, and let's say I get another $300,000 mortgage. My blended rate is 4.5%. Now that's significantly different than 6%. That would actually cause me to move, which would free up a property for the market that another buyer, another family really needs. Okay, let's move on. Last piece of real estate, and then we can move on from there. Let me share. Oh, come on, man. Share the screen. Bro. I love this software so much. I say that every single day. And yet I never take the time to go look for new software. Okay, so real estate deals have fallen apart at the highest level since 2017 this past December 2025. And I'm talking 16.3%. 1 out of every 6 accepted offer by a seller did not make it to a closing. That's a lot, guys. That is a big number. Now, according to the National Association of Realtors, Redfin, and a couple other sources, Zillow as well, there were a couple of basic reasons for it. The number one fallout point, the inflection point where a deal fell apart was actually the inspection. But that said, when the buyers themselves were actually interviewed, a lot of them, a third of them, said the inspection itself was fine. We just got buyer's remorse and cold feet. And they chose the inspection point to bail, right? And that happens. So if you're considering selling a home this upcoming year, know that that could happen. And It happens to our clients when we're helping them sell a home. It happens when our buyers are like, hey, you know what? We made a mistake. We can't actually afford this much property as we thought we could, or we relooked at the budget, or you know what? I just want to pause for a year. Any number of those reasons, because the inspection clauses in the purchase agreements are a literal get out of jail free card for buyers when they do a home inspection on a home, as long as it's within that time frame, that contingency period. Now, that said, when I'm representing sellers and when a buyer backs out, my advice to that seller is don't fight them. Just let them go, because we have a choice. We can try to say things like, hey, look, I think you're backing out because of A, B, C, and D. Therefore, I want the deposit. And now we're in a multi-week or even a multi-month fight, which my sellers will probably lose, because the inspection clauses on every purchase agreement out there says that they can walk away for any reason and they don't have to disclose why, right? And I know a lot of sellers that want to fight. I get it. I would too. I would be upset if I thought I was moving. I might have even put earnest money deposit and an offer in on a different property myself. We've got all these wheels in motion, and then all of a sudden it all goes away. I would be just livid, irritated. So I respect it. But again, the best thing to do for a seller is just go right back on the market. Now for a buyer, and we saw this on Channel 7, where a buyer bought a home in Detroit. It was a duplex. This young couple had moved up from Florida, wanted to move to Detroit, wanted to live in and be in the local community in Midtown, paid $450. The taxes on that property prior to them buying it were $3,500 a year, because the same person owned it for like 4 decades. The taxes went up to $19,800, like a $1,375 per month difference. Some buyers are backing out of real estate transactions because of that. So if you are a buyer and if you are looking at homes, be sure you're working with an agent that when you say, hey, look, I'm kind of interested in this property. So this happened the other day, right? Showing homes. Hey, Mike, I'm kind of interested in this property. Hold up. Give me 5 minutes. Why? Because I want to pull up the Michigan tax estimator and see what the next taxes will be, how that's going to affect your payment, and be sure that makes sense for you and your family. Now, in this case, it did. So great. Life was good. Carry on. Awesome. But in some cases, taxes aren't going up $100 a month. They're going up $1,000 a month. And that's a big difference, because you're going to get pre-approved. And when you're looking at purchasing the home, the lender is going to use the current taxes, not what the taxes will be, to estimate your monthly payment. So then you're looking at that payment at, let's say, $2,500 a month, just use a round number, and being like, oh, that's cool. And the lender says, you know what? Your taxes could go up $100 a month, $1,200 a year on the reset. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, 25 to 26, great. My father and I were having this conversation. So they've been in their home for, what was it, 22 years, I want to say. I think he said he was paying something like $8,500 a year. The next person is going to pay a little closer to $15,000. That's a $500 plus a month difference. So you got to think to yourself, okay, if I'm pre-approved and I'm comfortable at $2,500, what would that look like if it moved from $2,500 and I got a letter in the mail 6 months later from the bank saying, hey, look, your payment's now $3,000. Oh, by the way, you owe an extra $2,000 catch up because your escrows were deficient. Those are the things we got to think about. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing that cancellation rate as high as it is. Not the whole reason, but part of it. Now, that said, it's been happening. The highest metro with cancellations is actually Atlanta, and the biggest decrease in cancellations in December at 8% was actually Metro Detroit. So that's pretty cool. So it's actually happening less frequently here. Not that it doesn't happen, but happening less frequently here, which is pretty cool. All right, let's move on to the next thing. I don't even know what time it is. 7:35. Look at that. And again, guys, feel free to comment, ask any questions, anything you guys got. I seem to be answering the questions as they're coming in, which is why I'm not bringing them up on the screen, and also why I go down all these rabbit holes. Because when I get questions about property taxes, yeah, I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk about it, because this is an awareness piece. I literally, okay, earlier today I was on Fox 2, and we were talking about a house that we're going to talk about coming up here in not too long. Actually, no, I'm so sorry. I covered it last week, but it was that $800,000 house that sold in Detroit proper, 35,000 square feet. And the thing was a train wreck. Guy's going to have to put $3-4 million into it. Once listed at $9 million. But in the middle of that news report with Ronya, who's amazing, on Fox 2, I kind of turned the conversation because I felt like this tax thing was the right thing to talk about right now. We have a lot of first-time buyers and even second-time buyers looking to jump into the market this spring, and they don't have an awareness of how Proposal A works when it was put into place in 1994 and why it's broken now. And I don't even know why, but the state of Michigan is doing nothing about it. And that's another letter. You know what, guys? Stick in. At the next live next week, I'm going to have all of our representatives' contact information. I'm going to get that to you guys because as an informed public, as a mobile public, where we are having two-way conversations with our state representatives, that is the way that we get these things fixed. They don't know how big of an issue it is to us if we don't tell them. And that's politics, guys. That's how that works. And again, I don't take sides. I just speak to issues. Okay. Let's talk about the next thing. This is actually really cool. Okay. Who remembers George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic? So George Clinton's actually from just north of Saginaw, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of people also don't know who the heck George Clinton is, right? So he did, I don't know, let me pull something up. I'm not going to, I might play it. Why not? But George Clinton, this is actually, I think, really cool. GeorgeClin. All right, that'll work. I cannot believe I'm playing George Clinton on the live, by the way. This is hilarious. Yeah, so that's funk. And he is a Funkadelic. Okay. Old music. He's been around about 50 years and playing for about 50 years. He actually still plays. I cannot believe it. He played the reopening of Campus Martius at a free concert. What was that? Tell me, guys, if you were there like 6 years ago or whatever that looked like. I don't even remember when it was. Anyway, long and the short of it being, there's the 50th anniversary show. Now, it's not him playing this Saturday on the 31st. It's the DSO playing his music, which is the first time that's happened. He heard about it, and he's between stops on tours, thankfully, and he is flying. He lives in Florida now. He's flying up to Michigan to be a part of it and actually sit there and listen to the music at the concert himself. And chances are, guys, let's be real. He's going to end up on stage. He's going to Eminem that thing. He is literally going to Eminem that thing and be up on stage. I guarantee it. So if you want probably what will be our last chance to see George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic, that is the venue. That is the place this Saturday. It will probably be a great show. Also, guys, does anybody remember the movie where they were featured? It was a coming of age film, early 90s. Jeremy Piven was in it. David Spade was in it. College Campus. I know I'm totally giving it away. Steve Vai did the guitar, one of the G3 for the rest of the movie. Somebody throw that in the comments if you know what it is. And if not, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next story first, but I will tell you what movie that was. And he was a very young Jeremy Piven, like way before he was Ari Gold. He was this guy. This was definitely like the prelude to him being Ari Gold. Ari Gold, I love that. God, he did so good in Entourage. Entourage was after Grosse Pointe Blank, which of course took place here in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Part of it was shot here, and that was Dan Aykroyd and him. And God, I can't remember the other guy, but they grew up in Chicago together. Yeah, John Cusack. There we go. Okay, did anybody get the name of that movie yet? Name of that movie that George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic were the highlight of the movie as far as musical acts were concerned was called PCU, Politically Correct University. If anybody remembers it, throw that in the comments. Nobody's going to remember that movie, by the way. That was a very, very little known movie. Although David Spade was in it, and that was actually pretty cool. So George Clinton, guys, how about that? All right, what do we got next? Oh, okay. So here's something, and there's something that I believe is important about this story, although it's really, frankly, not that interesting. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Here we go. So the Detroit News and I don't even like this. So the Detroit News is being sold to USA Today, which is also the owner of the Free Press. Right. So this means that there is a furthering consolidation of our news and reporting that has been happening over the last 25 years in the United States. What does this look like today? Well, USA Today owns over 200 publications, 25 major ones, and they're adding a 26th, which means that fewer and fewer companies are controlling the news itself, the messaging that is going out, what their writers can write, what sides or what biases they can and cannot have, right? The Detroit News and the Free Press have always been leaning a little bit differently. We remains to be seen if they come into political alignment. I think they will over the next couple of years. Personally, I think they will, because that's what a company like a USA Today does as they continue to buy these. So the Detroit News and the Free Press, even though they were different leaning politically, had been operating for the last 35 years, 35 years, under the same basic roof. So they actually operated 36 years. They actually operated everything together. Now that contract came up in July, and they actually physically separated on January 1st. So before, in the late 80s through the 90s, a lot of these larger papers were consolidating their services. They were even sharing authors in certain times. Of course, they're printing as well, because it just made sense for economies of scale. But as this article notes, that has gone out of style. And this is one of the last, if not the last, major tying up of two newspapers together that still worked independently that has now fallen apart. When companies like USA Today buy these types of publications, they generally have a dictate top-down policy on what and how to report things. So we may see some news changing. We may see what this looks like. And that's why independent reporters, I want to say myself, but depending on what you want to look for, if you're looking for local news, then this live every single week, that's usually Thursday, 7 to 8, where it's less biased opinion, more fact-based is what you're going to want to start looking towards. You're going to want to start Googling those news sources more and more and say, hey, where is this leaning, and is this in alignment with what my values are or what I want to read? And again, I said I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on it because we got a lot of stuff to get through today, as we always do, because there's always a lot of news in Metro Detroit, which is cool. So that's it. So again, just buyer beware, check your sources. All right, moving on. Like I said, I don't talk about politics, but I will talk to it. Yep. Oh my gosh, come on, move. Okay, so this one is more of a national topic, but it does affect a lot of Detroiters and a lot of Metro Detroiters. So I'm going to share this with you guys because this is very important to know. There we go. Oh, come on, bro. All right, here we go. 2026, the tax code has undergone a huge change with that big, beautiful bill, right? That is now in effect. So for a lot of Americans and Metro Detroiters, they're going to see potentially bigger refunds or potentially nothing, or like not nothing, but no change. So let's dive into this a little bit. There are like 4 key things that have changed for the average American. Number one, your tips, if you're a waiter or waitress, are tax deductible up to $25,000 annually. So if you made $20,000 in tips, great. Anything beyond $25,000, you're paying whatever the rate is. So that goes back on top. So let's play this out. Let's say that you made $50,000 as a waitress or waiter or server. That's what they call them nowadays. And back in my day, they were waiters and waitresses. But let's say you made $50,000. Let's say 20,000 of it was from your salary, right? Just your hourly. Let's say 30,000 of it was from tips. Okay. So now the 25,000 out of 30 is untaxed. So now you're only paying on that $5,000 portion, which, by the way, drops you into a severely lower tax bracket. I'm going to talk about how that works because a lot of people are confused on that. And again, not spending a lot of time on this. Okay, overtime. If you're making more than your standard rate, time and a half, double time, whatever that looks like, you can then deduct $12,500 as a single filer or $25,000 as a married filer. Now, it's interesting. It doesn't need to be both the husband and the wife that are making that time and a half. If let's say the wife made $22,000 in overtime on time and a half and the husband made $0, you can still deduct the full $22,000 if you're filing jointly. Seniors who collect Social Security, you just got a $6,000 annual write-off, which is great. And then, of course, the big one is our SALT tax, which is our state income tax. So that benefit just where to go? I know SALT's on here somewhere. There we go. So your SALT tax, especially for Detroit and Pontiac people, your SALT tax includes anything that you pay to the state government and also anything you pay to the municipality in the form of an income tax. So Detroit's income tax, if you either work in the city or live in the city, is a good example. So those two things, the deduction is not capped at $10,000 anymore, is now flown all the way up to $40,000. And that said, for a lot of people, it's not going to make a difference because a lot of us were below $10,000 anyway. but it's there for our high income earners. And then also they raise the tax brackets on everything a little bit this year, which is great. But the thing I do want to point out is right here where our individual, can we see that? Oh, I know it's in the article because I read the whole thing. Anyway, 16,100, I believe. Our standard deduction. Does anybody see it? Point it out on the screen, guys. Okay. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to hold you guys up. So the standard deduction is now increased to just a hair over 16,000, right? But I want to show you guys this scale. So anything over 12,400 for individuals, or anything below 12,400, there's zero income tax paid. Anything above, it's a 12% tax up to 50,400. Then everything you make, but only what you make above 50,400 individual, then gets taxed at 22% up to 105. Okay. And this is why there's a big misconception when it comes to income tax. I actually teach this stuff. I'm teaching it in a couple of weeks, taxes, and all the different write-offs that are there. There's a big misconception that as soon as you roll over into the next tax bracket, all of your income is taxed. So there's the old saying like, hey, before you give me that $5,000 a year raise, let me check and see if it gets me into a new tax bracket because I could lose more than 5,000 income tax. No, that's not true. That is absolutely false because whatever spillage above the 5,000 into the next tax bracket would be, only that portion is taxed at the higher amount. That's it. Not all of it, just that's it. Okay. Let's keep on moving. Hopefully you guys are finding this beneficial. I see a lot of you guys are sticking in for a long time, which is very cool. And I appreciate that. Come on. There we go. Okay. So I want to remove this one. I want to change out this screen. It's happening. Yeah. I think I'm going to bring somebody in the office next week to help me out with just the screen changes because doing it all is fine. I don't have a problem doing it, but I just feel bad because you guys have to wait for me to flip through all these screens to get there. Yeah. If anybody wants to come in and sit with me for an hour or so, I'm here. Studios. Not this. Come on, bro. There we go. Okay, guys. Again, data centers are making news. There we go. Data centers are back in the news again in Southeast Michigan, and this time on the east side. So we saw the problems cropping up in Saline, and we saw some protests in South Line and that big data center. $50 billion worth of data centers going in somewhere in Michigan was what just OpenAI has committed to, not including Oracle and Microsoft and the other guys. Now we're starting to see some real pushback on a city level. So Chesterfield Township is looking to define the words data centers because there's nothing defining data centers in any of the coding with any of the building laws and edicts. So right now, data centers most closely in Chesterfield Township fall under the definition of warehouse because it's basically a warehouse with data centers. Like it's a building where you're storing stuff, right? That's the basis of a data center, right? It's not like you're shopping there. Let me put it that way. So it's not commercial. And the fear is, if we don't tightly define data centers all the way down on the city level, a company could come in and buy a warehouse and put a bunch of these servers in there for storage and leave them turned and run on. And now it's a data center. It's a loud, ugly one. Go figure. Taking up resources, of course. So that's the fear. So Chesterfield Township is yet another municipality in a long list of municipalities that's taken the steps to both define it, but then also potentially push back on even hearing proposals for them. And we saw that happen last week over in Northville. Northville has put a 12-month moratorium on even looking at a data center proposal. They don't even want it on the books. They don't want it at city council. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to deal with it. They're out on data centers for at least 12 months. And at that point, it's up to them whether they want to renew it or not. And I think it will be renewed because the people of South Line and the people of Saline have reacted very much against having data centers in their areas. And I do understand why. They soak up a lot of electricity. Some of them in the past have produced a lot of noise. A lot of them in the past, especially when they were using an evaporative method of cooling versus a Closed loop method of cooling was taking just ungodly amounts of water and natural resources. Thankfully now they actually take less than a golf course in Michigan. But nevertheless, people don't want them in their backyard. Nobody wants to live near them, right? We're all jumping on ChatGPT to find out what we should be doing as far as diets go and eating. Yet nobody wants to live next to a data center. And it makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying anything negative against anybody that feels that way. I'm just saying it is a truism from what I've been seeing and from the conversations I've been having and the polls that we've been doing. Okay. And yes, I do my own independent polls because I prefer my data and my original data sets over necessarily trusting somebody else. Yeah, true story. Okay, on to the next thing. Where are we at? We're going to flip over to Bloomfield. So the Cranbrook Institute of Science is bringing in the mystery of the Mayan Medallion. This is really cool for kids, by the way. If I remember right, it runs February 1st to June 7th. So you got some time to go see it. It's an immersive, family-friendly experience. Kids are learning stuff and all of that. If you guys have not been to Cranbrook, guys, yes, it is a hoity-toity school, for sure. It's an international school. People send their kids to dorm there because it is just that well known. But what it also is a science center, as well as a couple of other things. But my favorite thing is the Cranbrook Gardens. I actually run them sometimes several times a week, but at least a couple times a month. I'll run them during the summer. So because I live in Royal Oak, so just full disclosure, like I will run down to Cranbrook, do all the trails, and then run back home, and that hits around 18 miles total. Give or take a little bit. Is that right? 18 or 6? No. I have to stretch it out. I stretch it out through another couple miles. That's right. And guys, this summer, if you haven't done it, go to the Cranbrook Gardens. They are gorgeous. There's even a Japanese garden with a koi pond and everything in there that you can literally just go and sit for a little bit and contemplate life or whatever you want to contemplate or meditate. It's quite nice. It really is. It is very, very underrated. I'm not saying it's the best park or the best gardens in Southeast Michigan because the Ann Arbor gardens are fantastic. I am saying it's worth going to, and it's free. You just walk up. Anyway, moving along. Let's keep it going. That was more of a point of information than anything else. Let's see what we're going to bring to the screen next. Oh my gosh. Come on, computer. Load. Oh, this is cool. Okay, this is cool because I'm a nerd. So, fun fact, I'm a big fat nerd. I didn't know if you guys knew that or not. Yep, it is an actual true story. So this thing has had me geeked out. I am probably, of the 60 or so people that are watching right now, I am probably one of 3 that are excited. I made peace with that. So made peace with that. Here we go, guys. Here we go. Get ready for the fun. I'm bringing it. Okay, guys. So some of the original founding era documents, the Library of Congress is now allowing to go on a roadshow and for the 250-year anniversary of the United States. And that roadshow has 7 stops. And one of those stops is Dearborn, Michigan at Henry Ford, which is amazing. So they're bringing in all of these documents, which are really, really cool. Yeah, you can hear the excitement, right? This is probably my favorite thing tonight. Oh, I'm so excited. Actually, probably my second favorite thing tonight. So they're bringing these documents in, which is really cool. You can go see them, like the original document. You have to go to Washington, D.C. You can go see them. It's so cool. Like, check this out. Okay, this is what they're bringing in. The original engraving of the Declaration of Independence. It is 1 of 50. That's it. 1 of 50. The Articles of Association in 1774. Does anybody know what the Articles of Association is? Put it in there. Okay. It was the precursor. There's somebody probably typing in. They're like, Mike's just gonna just keep on talking. And yes, I am, because I'm so excited. So the Articles of Association were the precursor to the Constitution. So now we were beginning to frame out what Congress can and can't do. Like, this gave Congress the ability to stop trade with England. I'm not kidding. So that was like kind of the first thing, right? And then, of course, we had the Constitution and all the other constitutional rights. And now we got to decide whether we're strict constitutionalists or loose constitutionalists. If we're strict constitutionalists, could we even have like an Air Force? Because that was not strictly spelled out in the Constitution. I can go down this path forever. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. We've got George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and Aaron Burr's Oaths of Allegiance. We've got the Treaty in Paris in 1783. Does anybody remember the two things the Treaty in Paris did that were important to us? Well, one, it ended the war with Britain. Okay, so there's that. Two, it also gave us extra territory, which includes Michigan. So a lot of people think Michigan came later as part of the Louisiana Purchase when Thomas Jefferson paid $5 million to get Louisiana and this whole swath of extra territory. That is not the case. So France was going broke, so they sold that big trading port to us and a whole bunch of land that they didn't really care about. Michigan was not part of the Louisiana Purchase. A lot of people think it is. It was actually part of the Treaty of Paris. How cool is that, guys? That's coming. A little Michigan fun fact for you. Okay, we've got the secret printing of the Constitution in draft form, and then we've got the tally of votes approving the Constitution itself. And it's going to Kansas City, Atlanta, a couple other places. Nobody cares about those places, but we care that it is coming to the Henry Ford in Dearborn, and it's going to be here July 9th to July 26th. Put it on your calendars. It's going to be great. Get your kids, bore them to death. Read up on it ahead of time and look like the smartest person in the room to your children. Okay. That's it. Okay. I'm going to get off this whole historical doc. Oh, wow. We only have 2 things left. I'm sorry, 3 things left. This hour's passing fast, my friends. Actually, I'm sorry. It was 2 things left. Okay, so this is pretty cool. Although, kind of came in under what we were hoping, but we'll take it. We'll take it. Get that up there. Come on, bro. And then, of course, as always, we're going to end with something super fun and super heartwarming, like we always do. Like, if I could just put like a pail full of puppies on the screen, I would. I would, my friends. Okay, so Michigan has seen. Oh, yeah, there we go. Michigan has seen a population increase, more specifically due to international migration, but noting we're seeing a higher domestic immigration into Michigan that we have in a decade, almost 2 decades, actually. So this is how this shakes out. Michigan saw its population increase from June 2024 to June 2025 by 29,922 people. Let's call it 30,000 people. Of that, the majority of them were immigrants, right? As they have been for a lot of areas in the U.S. This is not just a Michigan thing. The places that they're coming from are predominantly India, Iraq, think Chaldeans as well, because those are considered Iraqi immigrants, China, and then, of course, Mexico. But what people don't also realize is one of the top 5 places that Michigan immigrants are coming from is Canada. Why do I point up? I point up because that's north, right? Canada. But people are coming here and we are growing. Now, that said, we aren't growing at as fast of a pace as some of the other Midwest states. So Indiana has grown 3%. Ohio has grown 1%. This is over the last 3-year period. Michigan has grown 0.5%. So we're still lagging behind. But for the first time ever, we've got back-to-back years where Michigan's population has actually increased instead of decreased. Now, that also said, if you look at the births and deaths, the deaths have actually outweighed the births for the first time in a long time. So we had, in the same time period, 104,000 deaths, but only 99,000 births. So we're going backwards. We're regressing around 6,000 per year as far as population goes by having a simply aging population that's not replacing itself as fast as some of the other states are. So do we have a hope? Yeah, of course. There's always hope. Is it getting better? Of course, it's getting better. Are we going to go from 10 million to 15 million in population? No, not anytime soon. But population growth does a lot of things for any state, and that includes bringing tax dollars in, because now you're spending on multiple levels. Now, of course, those families that come in are spending on gas tax. They're buying food. They're going to the mall because kids go to the mall. Right? Sales tax. They're getting taxed by the state because they've gained residency. All of those different things that happen that influence and help the state, especially when it comes to budgeting, all those positive things when population goes up. So I, for one, am very happy to see Michigan's population start to go up again. Is it as fast as I'd like? No, but it's getting there, and that's a good thing. Okay, guys, we are almost at the bottom of the hour already. Actually skipped a story that I looked at a second time. I was like, nah, this sucks, because I wanted to make sure I hit this feel good thing that's happening right now. And I wanted to keep it tight tonight to an hour, because last week it went an hour and 40 minutes. I loved it, but I know people just could not stick on that long, and I respect it. Okay, here's my feel good moment of the day. I literally had this sent to me directly before this live, like literally like an hour before this live, which I'm really kind of geeked about that this is finally happening. And I know we're all in this together, guys. We have all been on this journey. These two enterprising gentlemen have been tagged on my reels over 600 times in the last couple weeks. Which is really cool. I know Colin of Colin Detroit. If you guys are following him, he's a really nice guy, really cool dude. He's reached out to him a couple of times to try to show the beauty of Detroit. But we, of course, we're going to end tonight on this heartwarmer right here. Josh and Jace at the Lafayette Coney Island. Let's go.
Detroit, and we are about to try what we're going to try, Jace. We're going to try a Coney dog for the first time. We're in Lafayette. Let's go. Let's do it. Smells good.
Well, this is proper.
Oh, here we go.
This is the spot for Cody's, mate.
This is the spot.
This is the spot.
You know this is going to taste nice, because look how authentic this place looks.
Look at that. Look at these little... We've got our first Coney dog.
I did not expect it to look like that.
Got some raw onion. Good job, I've got toothpaste at home. Ooh. What? It don't taste like a normal hot dog. One more bite.
One more bite, yeah.
Double check. Mustard, chili, and onion on one thing is wild, but it works.
I don't want to get messy, so I've got a fork and knife. Let's eat it. Here we go. Oh. You know what? That tastes of America. I like it. I don't know what this is. Is that chili? I'm a fan of the Coney dog. Woof, woof. We are in Detroit.
And that's it, guys. My name is Mike Perna, local real estate agent here in Metro Detroit. When you're looking to buy or sell a property, use the Perna team. We've got over 5,000 3-star reviews over in Google. And again, I'd be honored to get the call to help you find your next home or sell your current one, or any combination of, or your family members or your friends or anybody else that you know, coworkers. And tune in, because next week I already see a couple of things shaping up as far as the news goes. Next week we'll be back to our regular time at 7 p.m. on Thursday. I feel like we will actually be going an hour and a half, even though I don't want to go that long, because I feel like we got a lot of news coming up between now and next week. Plus we got that extra day because I'm doing this a day early. Thank you again, everyone. And thank you again for your participation. I love all the comments. I love seeing where you guys are coming in from. And I will catch you in a week. Oh, I should probably move that back to the bigger screen when I'm doing that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I'll catch you in a week. 8 days. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for pointing that out, John.